In the quiet Louisiana woods where duck calls once echoed at dawn and faith was spoken louder than fame, the man who built a dynasty has taken his final rest. Phil Robertson, the duck commander himself, has passed away at the age of 79. The news sent ripples through fans of Duck Dynasty, the hunting world, and millions who came to admire the bearded patriarch's unflinching values and unapologetic authenticity. He wasn't a movie star. He wasn't polished, rehearsed, or politically correct, but he was real. And that realness, gritty, spiritual, sometimes controversial, carved a path from the backwoods of Louisiana to America's television screens and hearts. As we say goodbye to Phil Robertson, we remember not just the TV personality, but the father, preacher, and cultural icon who left behind more than a fortune. He left behind a legacy. Phil Alexander Robertson was born on April 24, 1946, in Vivian, Louisiana. The sixth of 7 children in a family that lived off the land, Phil's upbringing was anything but glamorous. They didn't have much, no electricity, little money, but they had grit, determination, and a bond with nature that would define Phil's future. From an early age, Phil developed a passion for the outdoors. Hunting, fishing, and living off the land weren't just hobbies. They were survival. It's what he knew, and it's what he loved. Despite his love for the wild, Phil was also an athlete. He earned a football scholarship to Louisiana Tech University, where he was the starting quarterback, ahead of none other than future Hall of Famer Terry Bradshaw. But Phil's heart wasn't in stadium lights. He chose open skies and bayou mornings instead. He turned down the NFL to return to the woods, a decision many thought was reckless, until they saw what he built. But before the empire came, the fake darkness. Phil's early adulthood was marked by personal struggles, alcohol abuse, infidelity, and a reckless lifestyle that nearly destroyed his family. But through the ashes came transformation. A born-again Christian, Phil found redemption in his faith. It redefined his path and became the cornerstone of everything he stood for. In 1973, Phil invented a duck call unlike any other. It mimicked the exact sound of a duck, something no other model could truly do. He called it the Duck Commander. What began in a small shop behind his house slowly grew into a thriving business, built on faith, family, and Phil's unwavering commitment to authenticity. Long before cameras arrived, Phil had already built something meaningful. But in 2012, Duck Dynasty brought his world into America's living rooms, and everything changed. The show was unlike anything else on TV. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't scripted. It followed a bearded Louisiana family who built duck calls, hunted, laughed, argued, and always ended the day in prayer. It was a show about values in a time when values seemed forgotten. Phil was the rock. With his calm presence, wisdom, and occasional one-liner or Bible verse, he grounded the show in something real. He reminded viewers what it meant to stand firm, to speak truth, and to never shy away from faith. Duck Dynasty ran for 11 seasons and became one of the most successful reality shows in cable history. But the real success wasn't measured in ratings, it was measured in impact. Phil's unapologetic Christianity, his emphasis on redemption, and his refusal to compromise struck a chord. In 2013, Phil made headlines and drew controversy for comments he made in a magazine interview. It led to a temporary suspension from the show, but instead of backing down, he stood firm. His family stood by him, and millions of fans rallied in support. To many, Phil wasn't just consistent, he was courageous. Behind the scenes, Phil was a husband, a father, and a grandfather. His sons, Willie, Jace, Jep, and Alan, credit him for the transformation that saved their family. From a man once consumed by darkness, Phil became the spiritual foundation of the Robertson household. He didn't just teach them to hunt or build a business, He taught them how to live with purpose. In later years, Phil stepped away from the spotlight. He focused on preaching, writing, and sharing his testimony. His books, Happy, 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 and Uncanceled, became bestsellers. He traveled the country, speaking to churches, men's groups, and anyone willing to listen. He believed in the power of grace, that no one was too far gone, that every soul mattered. He lived it, he preached it, and he proved it. After his passing, tributes poured in, not just from fans, but from family. They weren't polished statements. They were raw, emotional, and real. Willie Robertson said, "Dad wasn't perfect, but he was redeemed, and that made him fearless. He taught us to work hard, speak truth, and trust God. I'll miss him every day, but I know exactly where he is." Jace remembered working with Phil in their early shop. He poured his whole life into this, not for money, but for mission. He believed God could use anything, even a duck call, to change lives. Sadie Robertson Huff, his granddaughter, said, "My papa loved Jesus more than anything, and he never hid that. I'm who I am because of his courage to turn his life around and lead with love." Neighbors recall how Phil always had time for a handshake, a word of wisdom, or just a laugh. He lived simply. He gave generously. He never let fame cloud his focus. Phil once said, "Money can come and go. Fame is a vapor, but what you believe and how you treat people, that's what echoes in eternity. That's the legacy he leaves behind." He didn't see his fame as fortune. He saw it as a pulpit. Whether in front of cameras, behind a church podium, or sitting by the fire, he used his voice to lift up others and to lift up God. Phil Robertson's story wasn't clean or safe. It was rough, wild, and real, and that's what made it powerful. Because in the end, it wasn't about duck calls or television. It was about redemption. As the sun sets over the Louisiana woods and the last duck call fades into silence, we don't just mourn the man who left. We celebrate the man he became. From a rebellious soul to a redeemed leader, from brokenness to blessing. Phil Robertson's life reminds us all that no one is beyond restoration. He may have made his final call, but his voice still echoes in the bayous he loved, in the lives he touched, and in the family that now carries his torch forward. Rest in peace, Duck Commander. You've gone home.